Ryan, it's the beginning of June. You know what that means?
Death and destruction.
Oh, scary movies. Yeah. Oh. Scary movies is what it means. Hopefully not death and destruction. No death and destruction. We've lived through a year of possible death and destruction. Let's not do that. No, scary movies, because nothing says June and summertime like scary movies. This particular scary movie opened a couple days ago in theaters. And I believe on HBO Max. Yes. The Conjuring, the third installment, subtitled "The Devil Made Me Do It." Again, Ed and Lorraine Warren return to save people from spooky things. Really, is what we have. I don't know how you felt about Conjuring and Conjuring 2. Let's start there.
Loved The Conjuring. Was
sure.
somewhat disappointed with the second one. I wouldn't say I hated it. I mean, there's the whole franchise, though. It's been. I like a couple of the Annabelle movies. Not the first one, but the origin story and the last one that they did. A lot of the other ones I think fall kind of on the weaker side of things.
Right.
But I would say that I was very much looking forward to this and was very much disappointed that Warner Brothers didn't show it to me.
Right? Yeah, they actually did not screen it, and we'll talk about why. I think.
Well, maybe, but I mean, if you're going to show me The Nun,
right?
Why? So to put this in perspective, this is like being like, well, let's see. We will show you. Gosh, I mean, I don't know if the Marvel Universe has any. It would be like, we're going to show you Ant-Man, but we're not going to show you the Avengers.
Yeah.
So when they, up to this point, they've screened every entry in the franchise for us.
Right.
And so it's strange that, the one, this is supposed to be the primary, this is what everything's spun off.
The main timeline.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they decide that nah.
Well, here's my theory. My theory is that they didn't screen it because they don't have to, because this movie's audience is baked in.
Well, and there's that to a certain extent, and that happens with a lot of horror movies. They don't really feel like a critical review is going to do one thing or another for it.
Right.
They just figure that it's a horror movie, it's got an audience, and they'll go see it if they want to.
Exactly, especially a film like this.
And to put that in perspective, I mean, when Get Out came out, they didn't screen it for critics, which is hilarious because it was one of those things that a lot of critics went and found and then became a critical darling,
right? And
became this, whole different thing. But when it came out, they thought, it's a horror movie, kind of intellectual. We don't need to show that. It's just not going to appeal to critics.
Right.
It's not horror enough for them, or it's not smart enough for them. It's just I don't. So sometimes studios just don't understand what they have.
What?
Yeah, I know. Or they aren't completely aware of what makes a movie good, which may seem strange since they make movies, but
right. No, they make commodities.
Yes. So quite often the people who are making the yes or no answer or decisions on these things actually have no idea what they're doing when it comes to making a good movie. They know how to make a movie,
yes,
in the sense that they hired these people to do it, but they may not be able to. I mean, and that's why sometimes you'll see from the producers of this and this, and you're like, well, that movie was good, but everything else they've done is terrible. And it may all be. It's like everything. All these films feel like Matrix knockoffs, and that's because
that's because they were.
They were, and you have a particular producer who only really sees one thing, and then they got money on one, and they keep going with it anyway.
Yep.
So, yeah, they did not have to show this to us. They thought, I don't know what they thought. I mean, I haven't seen the numbers yet. They should be coming out here, but I don't think it would have hurt to send me a screening link.
I wouldn't have thought so either. But let's talk about this one.
All right,
Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are back This is based on the case of a real defense that someone put forth in a court of law, that they were not guilty of murder by reason of demonic possession. And so Ed and Lorraine are trying to help defend Arnie.
And sort of,
By
you know,
Arnie
I mean,
Johnson.
and that's,
yeah.
I mean, and I think that's kind of the framework that they're working in. But it's not really a courtroom drama, so don't expect a lot of court stuff. You know, when they go to the library, they go to pretty weird libraries. You know, I mean, it's not. There's some things, I guess, that line up with the court films, trial films, and whatnot. But this is still decidedly a horror movie, grounded in some pretty phantasmagorical stuff. It's probably, I would think it's certainly bigger than the first Conjuring, and that's maybe not necessarily a good thing.
Like a bigger story, is that?
Yeah, just okay. It's not so confined. Like they're running all over, and there are, you know, I mean, there's a lot more going on.
This, I told my wife, I said this felt more like a police procedural,
a little bit.
than another, but not in a bad. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay the scary and creepy elements in this.
No, but they're doing a lot of stuff that you'd see in other films. They just happen to be going to places that are really messed up, or really creepy, or really bizarre, and when I say messed up, it's not like Saw necessarily. It's actually probably better than Saw because it has some sort of folklore and possible widespreading implication sort of thing, that it's not just one psycho on the trail. Anyway, but I think generally speaking, I was expecting the film to be pretty awful.
Pretty awful, really?
Just based on the fact that they were so cagey about it. And
you could do a whole episode on that idea.
And I don't think it's a bad movie.
No, it's if you like the first two, you'll like this one. And if you're not a fan of the first two, you're probably not gonna like this one.
But you have to. I mean, these are quote unquote based on true stories, and the line between where the truth is and where the fiction is probably erased very early,
as it is most times.
But I don't care to a certain extent.
Right. It's just supposed to creep you out.
It's. I mean, how would that look in real life? Well, it wouldn't look. I don't. It's just don't go too deep into that rabbit hole because there's no point. There's a couple jump scares, but there's kind of an action-y feel to it. But you're right. The police. It doesn't move like it doesn't feel tied to like a haunted house story, or it doesn't feel. It feels very, very free of some of those cliches. There's a lot of cliches still in here.
And unlike the first two films, this film is really more about Lorraine using her abilities.
Sure. Yes.
And us watching. It's not just, oh, I feel something bad. It's like this is like an 85% Lorraine Warren film as opposed to a 50-50.
Sure, and and a kind of a better understanding of how she sees things. There's always in the films. There's always, well, don't go too far. Don't go too deep into this. And I think we all had a sense of, well, you don't want to go too far into that. Well, now we know
what happens
on a concrete sort of. This is why you don't want to go too far into this, because it's some messed up stuff. And so generally speaking, I mean, this is you've got the little kid who's possessed. He's all sweaty and screaming and saying horrible things and twisting and turning. And so you have the exorcism sort of element at the beginning, and then it goes off and does a little other stuff for a while, and then it goes back ultimately again to be another exorcism sort of film. But so this is a movie that has a lot of ideas. And is hitting a lot of different places. This is there's some Satanism in this one.
Yes.
Some witchcraft. So it hits a lot of, and I guess some people might say, well, it's kind of a greatest hits package, and maybe it is. There's no.
Hey, but you know what's great about greatest hits? They're all
hits.
great. There's a reason they made that album.
I guess they're missing the serial killer aspect.
Yeah, well,
that might be about, but I mean, as far there's monsters, there's just demons, there's I mean,
yeah.
I think it's fun. I thought it was a lot of.
It is great, but if there's one weakness, in this film, it's, for me, I don't really feel like the actual motivation of, I hate to say villain, antagonist is actually really clear.
Yeah,
people are cursed in this film. That's not a spoiler. That's in the freaking trailer. But it's like, so the driving force behind that is, I understand how they got to casting curses, but I don't really understand why. It doesn't. That didn't work for me so well. So, but if I just ignore that, then yeah, it's just another fun entry in the Conjuring universe.
They do go into this whole idea that Satanists aren't necessarily opposed to some individual, or it's not necessarily as personal. They are just essentially trying to do what the Joker does in Batman, and that is create chaos. So, or to punch holes in the fabric of faith, or whatever. And you're right. I'd agree with that. I think there's some stuff there that's very vague, and then you get some details and you think, well, how does that line up exactly? Because
right.
I had an idea about how this worked, and now it's kind of turned into a slightly different thing, and that's fine. It's not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. It's not a great horror movie. It's not one that that I'm going to tell everyone, oh, you don't like horror? Well, why don't you try this first? But I think for horror fans and for people who have enjoyed the Conjuring series, or who have enjoyed aspects of the Conjuring series, I think anything that you would really want is in there, except for, I mean, I guess we talk a lot about being grounded. This one isn't very grounded, which is fine. Right. It says it's based on truth, but the world that exists within has clearly been exaggerated, and whatnot. Oh, yeah. So but it's got. I mean, there's some neat scenes.
Oh my God, there are some really neat scenes in it.
Even if my question is like, well, who brought all those statues down there? Who was the person who dragged all these things down into this place? Who decorated? But did they have help from their neighbors? Because man, that's a lot of work. I mean, there are certain things, where if I overthink it, it's really ridiculous.
Yeah, no, you can't overthink it. Can't overthink it. It's like, why don't we just get in the running car? It's all, you have to let some stuff go.
Yeah.
Real quick. So I think we're both on the side of this is a pretty solid entry in the Conjuring universe. It doesn't suck.
Yeah. No,
it does not suck at all.
It's better than the last couple standalones have been. As far as I'm concerned, unquestionably better. So I'm just, it's like, oh, well, did you just, I mean, you built an entire franchise off of this, Warner Brothers. What, did you just decide you didn't care anymore?
Yes, it's Warner Brothers. Hello.
I don't understand any of the logic or lack of logic, or
with how they're doing their films.
Yeah, because I mean, you've built a universe around this. Shouldn't you? If it was big enough to make, half a dozen other films, well.
Yeah. What were we doing here?
Anyway.
Or why weren't we doing? Okay, so we're both on the recommend side. So the film is available now in theaters.
And HBO Max.
And quick hat tip to boxofficepro.com that I just pulled up, where it is reporting that The Conjuring is going to pull in $24 million to take the top spot at the box office.
maybe.
With A Quiet Place Part 2 at 19 and a half.
Okay, so there you go. But then the question becomes, well, what if it hadn't been on HBO Max as well?
I know, right?
And
there's no premium.
Yeah, well, and there's a whole lot that you can dig into, particularly with the Cruella release and how successful, quote unquote, it was.
Or wasn't, depending.
Or, yes. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe,
Cruella finished third still with 11.2.
Yeah, but the problem with Cruella is it cost $200 million to make.
Right.
And so with Cruella, no matter what you do, there were numbers that got leaked, and I don't know how accurate they were, that basically said Cruella off the $30 premiums made about 20 million. So you put that together, it's still around, with what it made last week, it was like 48 million.
Right.
And for a $200 million movie,
yeah, that's a bomb.
48 million is not a good opening. Now,
no.
48 million for A Quiet Place 2, which only cost 60 million, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's solid. You cut that in half, you spread that around the world, okay, it's going to make some money. But so it's almost like not every movie can be judged by the same standard, I guess.
Right.
And if we're talking financial successes, is it great that Disney was able to make 20 million off of their $30, whatever? Maybe, but how much?
But it looks bad on the film.
Yeah, well, and it just doesn't ultimately like like I said, if it was a film that only cost 60 million to make, that's a completely different story. But when you're dealing with a massive movie that costs 200 million to make plus advertising. And granted, the key difference here is whatever Disney makes it at the box office, they have to split with the theaters.
Right.
It's usually like a 60-40 split. So they get all of that 20 million, but from the digital sales,
right.
from the premium sales, but how many people watched it? Were there 13 people in a room? It was a holiday weekend. Families of 12 who would have typically have gone to the movie theater say, "Oh, let's just stick in,
right.
Got a and watch it here."
That's part of the reason I think that people were still saying, "No, theaters are done." It's like, no, they're not, because studios cannot make the kind of money they want by streaming.
No,
I think it doesn't. They're never going to.
Well, and to put this in perspective, who was releasing a ton of movies in theaters when no one else was? Netflix.
Ironically.
So, Netflix was releasing movies in theaters a week before they came out on their streaming service. And they did it for a lot of movies. So clearly there's some sort of benefit in having a theatrical release. Even if 7 days later it's going to be on Netflix, which everyone mostly has, or if they don't, they've stolen their friend's account, or whatever.
Right.
It just
exactly.
So there's obviously still a need for theaters.
Yeah.
Especially
on the bigger films.
Yeah. It just and so the death of theaters. The theaters I worry for are the small indie art houses.
Right.
Because Netflix and Amazon and Apple have all started to pillage the directors that are kind of art house favorites, because they make films for reasonably small amounts of money.
Right.
And
they get a return on them.
And they have an established fan base, so it makes a little more sense for a streaming, service to spend 20 million on a film.
Yep.
Because that may get enough people re-upping or coming to your platform or whatnot, particularly in the case of an Apple TV or
right.
One of the newer ones, probably Apple TV more than anything.
Yeah.
But Paramount's going to get on that game pretty soon here and whatnot. So there is this, but it's scary because I don't think indie film is going away, but indie theaters might be, and that's kind of scary.
The consumption of that kind of film is going to change.
Yeah.
but it's not going to change the big budget. So, okay, so there you go. That is The Conjuring 3. The Devil Made Me Do It.
Which is actually a terrible.
It is terrible title. This is a terrible title.
Like
but I think it might be based on an actual headline.
Yeah.
So, but it's still it's they could have picked anything else. They probably should have picked anything else. So the worst part of the film is probably the title. So yeah, but if you're a fan of The Conjuring, you'll enjoy it.
And that's okay. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
But
so
yeah.
So yeah, so in theaters and on HBO Max now. So go get your scary movie June fix on, and Ryan and I will be back with more big releases soon because they're coming, and we're happy about that. So Hollywood is back, theaters are back. Yay! We are happy to be back. So till next time, I'm Mark. That's Ryan. Bye, Ryan.
See you guys.
And we will talk to you all later.